Okay, I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jesse Hill, and I'm the president of Tier 3 IT Solutions. Today, we're going to spend some time talking a little bit about the 2026 outlook in terms of technology and how that is, helping businesses move towards their growth targets, overcome challenges they may have, and many of the things that we talk about regularly. So by the end of this session, we hope that you'll understand a little bit more about how technology can help accelerate your business to grow faster, help your employees and your team work smarter, and ultimately to stay ahead of your competitors. We want you to learn how to overcome, certain common challenges that businesses face when it comes to technology, to avoid some costly mistakes, and we hope that there's some practical takeaways that you'll get from this that you can take back to your business, your organization. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A. I'll be happy to try to answer those as we go. And so the first thing we want to do is we want to just take a step back and zoom out and really think about the big picture. Technology, it isn't just evolving, it is accelerating. Your customers, they expect faster service, smarter solutions, and a seamless experience. We all have times where we've had to wait for someone to say, "Oh, sorry, my computer's acting up," or they're obviously struggling to deliver the service you came for because of that technology. I gave a talk yesterday about the impact that AI is having on businesses, and the challenge there is that if you're not adopting these new technologies, you are competing against businesses who are starting on those platforms. And so your competitors are already leveraging these technologies to move faster, cut costs, and keep their pace of innovation up. So, in business, if you're not growing, you're dying. And it's the same thing in technology. So we need to be thoughtful in how we approach this, but continuously assessing, evolving, and moving forward. So to us, technology acceleration, it helps businesses adopt and adapt to the new reality of operations. So whether it's AI, which is of course the big topic these days, cloud adoption is still something that a lot of businesses are pursuing, and ultimately, as these technologies become more commonplace, it actually reshapes how businesses operate, the expectations that your employees have in terms of location of work, hours of work, accessibility, what devices they're using, how they're serving customers. And they give you ways to streamline operations and hopefully unlock new opportunities. So we're already starting to see these things accelerate and come into action. So whether it's mining the data that you have to get better insight into your client expectations or needs, to mapping out different ways of handling logistics, inventory management, all those types of things. And as these newer technologies become more common and people use them in their own lives and their own work, they'll come to expect it from you and your business and your organization as well. So obviously, we're a little bit biased being a technology partner, but we really believe that the businesses who are proactive in this manner, they view their investments in technology as not just something they have to do to keep up, but something that they do to get ahead and to stay ahead and to widen the lead. And we talk a lot about customers, but it also plays into attracting and retaining people. And when you embrace some of these technologies, it can really unlock real advantages. So the first thing we have on here, resilience and adaptability. It's rare these days that I talk to a business that doesn't depend extensively on technology. And so if you're using old, outdated technologies, it can be a little bit more susceptible to risk. It can be harder to find people who can adapt and solve those problems. And it may limit your options in terms of new integrations, new features, new functions, and it causes you to have to take a bigger jump than if you had moved little by little along the way. Operational efficiency. This is, I think, one of the main topics we hear about these days, particularly with AI, is how can you enable your people to do more, to be more efficient, to focus their efforts on client engagement rather than repetitive manual task type of work. We've touched a little bit on the competitive edge and the customer experience, that we really believe that the businesses who are continuously revising and reviewing and adapting their technology, they are going to lead in their markets when it comes to those two metrics. And then, of course, innovation. The more you learn about these tools and technologies, the more likely you are to be able to see opportunities in other areas of your business to bring those into play. It's not easy. We do see common challenges when we talk to businesses, things like limited time and resources. Like, we're all running businesses. We all have things that we have to get done today, and it can be hard sometimes to allocate the time to learn a new technology or to budget things that you haven't had in there in the past. It's always interesting to me how reluctant some businesses might be to invest in a new technology, but they're openly willing to bring on more people, and those are very different decisions, I think, nowadays. The fear of complexity is really that these new tools, they can feel overwhelming. There might be compatibility issues. We might need some training, and there's a bit of a dip in our performance and output at the beginning before we start on that upward swing. And I think this last one, not knowing where to start, is probably one of the big challenges that people face. And it goes back to the old adage of how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time. So I always recommend, when we're thinking about new technologies and where we might be able to put them in our business, we want to be not thinking about the technology, but we want to be thinking about the outcome that we're trying to achieve and the business processes and people and individual steps that get us there. Because when we think about it from a business perspective first, we can find an opportunity to weave technology in, as opposed to selecting a technology and then adapting our business to that. We've got a bunch of key points on here, but one of the I think important themes here is that embracing this idea of being a technology innovator, that we're using technology to accelerate our business, it does take, for a lot of people, a bit of a shift in mindset, in that we have to be willing to let go of the way that we have done things in the past and recognize that there may be a digital transformation underway that's going to help us connect things and unlock new capabilities. The culture of innovation, and you'll notice that a bunch of these are culture of innovation, continuous learning, customer experience. It's all about how people are interacting with technology. As business owners, I think a lot of times we probably don't have a clear perspective of what it's like to be a customer or to be a frontline employee. And we need those ideas to come from them so that, again, we're not making our people adapt to the technology. We're finding ways to use technology to support and improve their experience. We get down here on talking about upgrading infrastructure and developing a strategic plan. This is something that we see in our work, that sometimes businesses have an idea of what they want to do next, but in order to support that, they're kind of 3 steps behind in other areas. So just good hygiene practices around planning, investments, replacements, upgrades, maintenance have to be in place, because as we adopt new technologies, we actually do consolidate some of our risk, and we need to make sure as business owners that we've considered all of that. And then leveraging data-driven decision making. I think one of the big promises of the AI future is that we can put all of our relevant business data into a model, and it can assess it and give us insights and ideas of how we might use that to make decisions around hiring, around inventory management, pricing. I was in a session yesterday with a gentleman who was talking about they use it to assess the ebbs and flows of rental income across a portfolio of investments that they have, and they dynamically adjust rent based on the different factors that they're seeing in there. So these are the types of things that forward-thinking businesses are implementing today. Which brings us to the future outlook. And again, I don't want to hammer on it too much, but AI is everywhere. From customer service, marketing and analytics. I just talked about rent. Another gentleman yesterday was talking about using it to build a profile around what furniture people have looked at within their store, and helping them assess what other add-ons and things might be of interest to them. Remote and hybrid work, depending on your operations, your organization will determine how you want to work with this. But we are seeing, still today a preference from a lot of people to be able to work at least hybrid, if not, remote. Now, automation and AI, they often get confused. They are different things. And so when we talk about that business outcome that you're trying to achieve and how you get there, there may be some steps that get automated, which means the same processes run on them every single time. And there may be times where you're going to use AI, which is assessing and evaluating and coming up with a kind of a logic-driven approach. But this last one is, I think, really important, is that regardless of how you intend to go about implementing these new technologies, we have to have a solid foundation of cybersecurity. We've already seen this with AI developing so quickly that organizations have not fully understood what happens when they interact with a public chatbot, some of the big LLMs like ChatGPT and Gemini, and realizing that your data has value to you. It also has value to people outside your organization. So we need to make sure that we are considerate of how we're protecting that information, how we're retaining control over it before we go too fast, because we don't want information that is private and confidential to end up in places that it shouldn't. So some pitfalls you want to avoid. We have the first one on here, choosing the wrong software. I struggled with this one a little bit because we try to spend less time talking about tools and software and technology and more time talking about the business outcome that you're trying to achieve. But if you're in the process right now of thinking about a change in software, whatever it may be, I really think it's important that you're evaluating what the future roadmap for that software looks like, what the history of it looks like, and recognize, unfortunately, that a lot of legacy software packages are going to struggle to adapt to new technologies as they come, because they have this legacy code base, legacy client, legacy things that they have to maintain. So we want to really think about that. And one of the things that I've found, depending what industry you're in, is I'm starting to find people out there who specialize in helping organizations assess and select, software and technology solutions. Getting bogged down in technical complexities, we want things that are simple. We want things that your team can adopt quickly, that tie into their workflow and that support them, rather than getting them to change too much about what they do. Inaccessible technology is, again, it's kind of that complexity part of it, but it's where people have to jump through too many hoops to get things done. It's confusing. It's making their work more difficult. It's not enabling them. We've talked a little bit about how falling behind can stifle your ability to adapt in the future. So we want to make sure we're staying not just up to date in terms of maintenance, but that you have an investment plan, a replacement strategy that is based on more than just how old things are. So we have an entire training program around those strategies. If you're interested, let me know. We don't want to, we just talked a little bit about protecting our data. We don't want to end up in a situation where anything's become compromised. So cybersecurity is key. And difficulties integrating with existing systems. So this again is part of, kind of goes to the top one, choosing the wrong software. These two things, top and bottom, go together. More often than not, what we find today is that new technologies, new software, new cloud solutions, they do one thing really well. And then they have integrations to tie them into other platforms or tools or things that you might use. So it's important to make sure that both sides of the tool set can talk to each other. And if you really get into it and you start drawing a map of how your integrations work, you might find that you have multiple integrations going back and forth. So that's a big one. It's also part of on the IT management side of things that has made managing technology today more complex than it has been in the past. So we want to help set you up for success in your technology planning and strategy into 2026. And so we have a couple of points on here, and I'm going to kind of bring them all together. Really, as I've talked about throughout the chat here today, is that, to me, we want to start by thinking about the business outcomes that we're trying to achieve, the challenges that we're facing in achieving those, and what we need to overcome to get there. Then we can start, talking to our people, getting feedback where possible from our team, from our clients, engaging with our vendors to find out, do they have solutions for this? What's on their roadmap? What does this look like? And as we go through, if you're thinking about making a change in technology this year, it's really important to have an implementation plan that includes planning, monitoring, implementation security, and training, right? We've got that on here, investing in training. It amazes me how many businesses, they depend on their staff to be proficient and productive when they're working on the computers. But when we get in and we talk to those folks, we find out most of them are self-taught when it comes to basic Microsoft Office applications like Word and Excel. They may not have a depth of understanding around how things like formulas work and macros and those types of things. And they're doing the best that they can, but we as business owners could support them. And it's the same thing we talked about before, is that if we take some time away from their production, yes, it's going to go down a little bit at the beginning as they're doing their training, but as they learn and understand these new technologies, then the productivity ramps up. And then staying agile. I think this is another important one, is that as technology is changing, and I'm going to come back to AI on this one, we need to be willing to adapt. So AI, for most of us, has really only been accessible for the last 3 years or so. And more likely in the last 18 months is when you've been interacting with it and implementing it. And any plans or ideas that you have around how you're going to use AI, are going to change. You need to be willing, potentially on a 12-month basis to look at, assess, and potentially replace those platforms, that quickly, because quite frankly, they're changing faster than anything has ever changed, in the past when it comes to technology. So, some quick wins. Is there something in your business that could be automated? Something that is routine, mundane, that's taking up someone's time that could be better spent on something more productive. Computers are really good at repetitive processing of information. People tend to be more valuable when they're in conversation, engaging with each other, doing creative problem solving. And so we want to elevate our people so that they can spend more time on that. We've got things on here about moving processes to the cloud. This just helps to streamline your on-premise workflows. There's, like we mentioned before, some integrations and other things that might come from that. Upgrading communication tools. There's a lot of really great opportunities to take your various different communications platforms, bring them together, get information all in one place, make it so that people can get their work phone calls on their device when they're the mobile, those types of things. Security. We talk about this all the time. We want to make sure that we're understanding the risk and the opportunities that we have to secure our businesses. Training our team on one new tool. This goes back to just a lot of business things that we've learned and adopted over the time, is that it's better to complete one task and do it really well than to get partway into 10 tasks. And so when we think about how are we enabling our team to leverage technology in a more meaningful way moving forward, well, what is one area of opportunity that we could train our staff with respect to technology this quarter? Get a technology health check. An independent third-party review of what we've got in place is really important. I mean, again, as business owners, we probably do it with our finances and our insurance, and personally, you probably get some type of health check from the doctor and those types of things. Same idea with technology. And this last one here about creating a backup plan. Now, I'm not actually talking about a data backup plan, right? That should be a given. You must have really good backups of your information. What we're talking about here is what happens if you don't have access to technology for a day or a week. And it might not be as a result of a cyber incident like ransomware or something big like that. It might be that there's construction and they dig up the fiber in front of your building. It might be a power outage. It might be a flood. But make sure that you understand, if you didn't have technology, how would you and your team adapt and continue to run your business? Start small. Pick one area that's easy to improve or where you've identified a high level of risk. Focus on that one area. So go really deep on it instead of going wide. And it might be operations, customer service, security, finance. Partner with experts. Every organization has the thing that they do best, and ultimately, I think that's what you want to try to do when you're getting perspectives on things that are outside of your scope of expertise. And of course, from our side of things, this is a part of what we do with our clients on an ongoing basis. So if you have any interest in having a conversation with us about this, we love talking strategy, business strategy. How can we help evaluate the objectives you're trying to achieve and potentially find technology solutions to help get you there, ongoing support, to help you move through that process. And then, we talk about security over and over, but that is a core part of what we do. So let's make it happen. If you want to spend some time chatting with us one-on-one, and we can walk you through a personalized technology acceleration plan that fits your goals, helps you overcome some challenges. We can talk about how you can fit that into your budget, avoiding all the technical jargon, no pressure, just practical steps. We'd love to chat with you. And obviously you're here today, so thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Sorry again for the late start. And happy to stick around, answer any questions that you have. Or if you want to connect with us afterwards, feel free to scan the QR code or shoot us an email, and we'll connect with you then. So thanks a lot for joining. Really appreciate it. As I said, we'll stick around and answer any questions that you might have. So thanks a lot.